And we're recording, so whenever you'd like to begin.
Good afternoon. I'd like to call the November 17th meeting of the Human Affairs and Racial Conciliation Commission to order. To begin the meeting, I'd like to refer to our statement of purpose. The purpose of HARC is to promote equity, inclusion, and racial conciliation through meetings, presentation, and research regarding all forms of institutional and community discrimination, and assist in implementing any recommendations from the mayor and the council through its standing committees to the public to assist with education, implementation of any directives from council. Equity for the purpose of HARC's duties and responsibilities shall be defined as the guarantee of fair treatment, access, opportunity, and advancement, while at the same time striving to identify and eliminate barriers that have prevented the full participation of some groups. With that in mind, I'd like now to take a moment of silence, a matter of invocation, for us to reflect on our charge and the work that we have to do today and in the future. Thank you. We have an agenda placed before you. There's a request that we move item 7 up the agenda, and we'll do that perhaps following the approval of minutes. Can I have a motion to that effect?
I move that we approve the minutes from our previous meeting.
Moved by Bonnie, seconded by Jason. Further discussion, all those in favor, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Aye.
Abstentions? So ordered. We have that adjustment. The next item on the agenda is comments from the public. Madam Clerk, do we have any individuals?
I think we have one citizen online who'd like to speak.
Okay.
Good afternoon. Thank you, the commission, for having me. I am Marla Robertson. I'm the Community Assistance Program Director based in the MPA program at the College of Charleston. And I work very closely with Dr. Kendra Stewart and Ali Moriarty in the Riley Center for Livable Communities to help the city and really across the state capacity build. Some of the work that we've done in the past has been working with Amber Johnson and the Human Affairs and Race Conciliation work with the race equity framework for the city department heads. We've also worked with the planning department on the master plan, helping them support and encourage racial equity lens in some of the plan. And we've also worked with the police department to help them actualize their most recent strategic plan that they have in place. And I really wanted to just come here this evening to make sure that the commission understands all of their resources, including the Community Assistance Program and the Riley Center. We would love to help support and encourage the commission getting some of the recommendations implemented at the city level. And I wanted to offer our information and our contacts for the commission as they move forward.
Ms. Robinson, thank you for your comments. Also, you might want to note your role as a member of one of the subcommittees of the Special Commission.
Yes, I worked on the Human Resources Subcommittee. I think I have my hand in several pots in when we talk about social and racial equity. And so I've worked with Darren Calhoun on that, on the recommendations component. So I'm really excited and honored to help support the work that we're doing in Charleston now.
Thank you. Customarily, we don't have opportunities to ask questions, but I believe you're the only member of the public present. So are there any questions from commissioners for Marlon? Jason?
Just wanted to say thanks for joining us and providing those comments, and you're always welcome to be here in person.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
You're welcome.
Bonnie?
Sorry. I would love to hear 1 or 2 sentences about the Riley Center and the Community Action Program.
Well, thank you. The Community Assistance Program our major focal point is helping local municipalities, nonprofit organizations, as well as community-based organizations capacity build. And I know that's very general and vague, but it's intentional, right? Because our purpose is to make sure that we're able to come in with skilled labor. We have about 6 students in our graduate program that support and encourage this work. Oftentimes it's research-based work. And so we've also worked with Becca and Meg Thompson in the neighborhood services in their mission and revisioning work. And so it really just depends on the needs of each individual institution or agency that we work with, how we come in and support that organization. And really it's helpful to be able to have so much skilled labor at little to no cost to these agencies. So they're not, digging a hole deeper, just trying to carry out additional specialized work. The Riley Center is a larger institutional entity of the College of Charleston. We have multiple faculty, fellows, and they are, they have if I have my hands in pots, they are, the stove per se, because they work with multiple entities across the nation, government agencies, organizations. They help spearhead conferences. But the work that I do with the Riley Center is to help them in their project-based work. So they're working on a myriad of projects, from Hanahan Fire Department to the fire department in Columbia, South Carolina, helping them with strategic planning. They're also working on some projects with CARTA to help really expand the resources with the mobile ticketing component. And so again, they're in that same vein, right? It really depends on what our entities are looking for, how we can help support them in research-based work, strategic planning, focus group work. It really kind of is open for how we can help capacity build. So I really enjoy working with them, and Dr. Stewart is back from her travels. And so we're full throttle right now.
Thank you.
Carol?
Yes, thank you very much for proactively making yourself known to us as a now more permanently established commission. And I try to spend a lot of my time with the organizations that I've committed to, which are mostly community development, housing, and small business development. And I know just by anecdotally that people don't always have the time or the energy to, sort of like think across those collaborative lines. But in a location like we are, I think it's increasingly important. So I would just strongly encourage you to give us some ideas that you would like us to consider, and don't be shy about it, in my opinion. Thanks very much.
Any additional questions for any commissioners? Now, thank you so much, Dr. Robinson, for being with us. There anyone from the public who wishes to address the commission? You have 3 minutes.
We do have one guest joining by phone. I wasn't sure if they were joining to speak or not, but if you would like to speak, you can press *6 to unmute yourself. All right, I think that's all we had.
Okay, that concludes our public participation portion. You have before you 10 pages of minutes verbatim from the meeting. And I want us to add to I hope you all are logging how much time you're spending on the commission, all right? So we can get an accurate record how much time we're actually investing. And reading the minutes took, a couple of minutes for me today. Are there any suggestions, corrections for the minutes? Move approved. Motion to.
Second.
There's a motion to second. Motion to move and approve have been seconded. There is one correction, 2 corrections that I caught on page 7. The first full paragraph is kind of in the middle of the page. It reads, Co-Chair Harris said that Commissioner Law, that should be Commissioner Long. And on page 10, the comments made by Ms. Stuber, it's in the second full sentence. She mentioned earlier that Hark was involved with the history and settlement community and trying to develop a network. What she, I recall her saying was that Harris, that's me, was involved from attending some meetings and not the whole Hark Commission. So I want to make those changes. The motion, maker of the motion, a second, will accept those modifications
As amended.
as amended. Okay. All in favor of accepting the minutes as amended?
Aye.
Abstentions? Opposed, I'm sorry. Abstentions? So ordered. With that said, we'll go to item number 7, the Low Country Rapid Transit presentation.
Mr. Chairman,
Seekings.
you ready?
Yes, sir.
All right, so members of the commission, if I might just for a moment, I have the privilege today of introducing to you Morgan Grimes, who's back there. Come on up, Morgan. Give you the clicker. So Morgan, her title, which is on your agenda, is the Communications and Outreach Specialist for the Berkeley, Charleston, Dorchester Council of Governments. It's a big, long title. What she does is really amazing. This is the first job, by the way, she's had out of college, and her job is to go out into the community and teach people, educate people, and answer questions about the first and only large-scale public transit project we've ever had in the state of South Carolina. It is a big lift and a big job, and she does incredible work with it. She also has the burden of having to every now and then listen to me speak as well, which she did today at the Chamber of Commerce for about an hour. So turnabout is fair play. Now we get to hear from her, and I'm going to make some notes about some of my own fact checking, but I think this will be an interesting presentation for y'all and really consistent and consonant with the mission of this commission. And I think that there's a lot of work we can do together with Morgan and the team that is putting Low Country Rapid Transit in our community. So with that, I'd like to introduce you all to Morgan and turn over the floor to her.
Welcome, Morgan.
Yep, we record everything here, so if you can use that microphone, it'd be great.
Much issue. Mentioned, I've been working with that the outreach specialist for Low Country Rapid Transit. So I'm very excited to bring an update on some of the project, but I definitely want to, make sure that we are letting the public know about what it is. So with that, I will go ahead and get started. So just the project background, this really came out of the population growth that we see on an everyday basis here in Charleston. So people are living here every day, and we really do need to look at other ways to get around other than the traditional car. We see the roadway congestion on I-96, and we really just can't ride our way out of this traffic problem. So we need to come up with a new solution. So back in 2014, there was an IT study, and this was really just to look at what other methods make sense in this area. And like we looked at, basically all the solutions possible, and we came out with we came out with bus rapid transit as the preferred mode. So that's what came out with that and shows it is cost effective, it's very flexible, and it works well for our region.
Are you not working? Is the clicker not working?
Stop working. Thank you. It also was a voter decision. There was so this is our current service route. So the system will start in Ladson near the fairground. So of course that is very close to Somerville, Lincolnville, so it connects those areas to the start line, and then it goes all the way down 78, turning into River Avenue. And I want to highlight on River Avenue, this is where that dedicated center of the bus community, which really makes this project so transformative and groundbreaking. We've never seen anything like this before in the area.
Thank you. We've never seen anything like this before in the area, so that's going to be very exciting. So it continues down Rivers Avenue and then goes in the neck area, of course, and ends downtown Charleston in the peninsula at Line and Haygood. So that's a pretty long stretch of area. It's about 21.5 miles of service. All the stations connect to resources in the area. So the goal is to connect our community members to jobs, healthcare, food, entertainment, education, all the resources you can think of. That is the goal, is to connect the community in a very equitable way. So here's some statistics. It's about 21 hours service, so almost 24/7. It helps with service workers, late night shifts, really just to connect the entire community in an accessible way. Okay, thank you. Here is what the station architecture will look like. So as you can see, the Charleston stations will have kind of a slanted top, and the buses will run in North Charleston in that dedicated bus lane that I mentioned on Rivers Avenue. So those bus stations will be in the middle of the road alongside that center running bus lane. So that's going to be really cool. And then in other areas where the roadways are more narrow, like downtown Charleston, it is going to have side running stations, and the bus is going to run in mixed traffic. Yes, thank you. Here's some of the station amenities. This system, we want to make sure that it is accessible for the entire public. So we've included things like ADA compliance, level boarding. There will be Wi-Fi and other technology. You can see when the buses will be coming. So real-time information. There will also be bicycle accommodations. So people that travel via bicycle can bring their bikes on board, which is going to be, very nice, great feature. And these buses can fit about 60 to 90 people. So they're going to be very different than what we currently see with CARTA. And this is a premium service, but it is also going to be affordable. That's the great thing. It's going to reflect the cost of CARTA. So we're really excited about that. Next slide. Here is a view, of our station, center running station at Remount Road. So this is what you can see, what you will see at all the stations down Rivers Avenue. They're going to be, like I mentioned, in that center running bus lane. So there will be a lot of safety improvements. Obviously, people do have to cross half the street to get to a center running station. So we recognize that currently Rivers Avenue is very dangerous. I'm sure all you know how dangerous it is to, if you're biking, if you're walking, if you're driving on Rivers Avenue, it's, there's a lot of accidents. Unfortunately, a lot of people are getting killed or hurt. So we are going to be addressing a lot of those safety issues. We will be implementing crosswalks and some other things as well, just to make sure people can safely access the stations. Next slide. Here is what a station downtown will look like. So like I mentioned, it will be side running stations. This is one at UG Street. So it's going to be great. People can easily access it on the side of the road downtown. Here are just some of our other station and vehicle amenities. Like I mentioned, accessibility is a huge component of this project. So you will see a lot of those improvements. Also want to mention a feature an efficient system. Here's some of the other features that you will see that will address the safety concerns. So there will be about 17, almost over 17 miles of shared use path, which is great for those people that are biking along the corridor. All the crosswalks will be implemented, as well as new sidewalk and bike lane. So one thing we really want to highlight with this project is TOD, which stands for transit-oriented development. This is extremely important when, having a future transit system, because what we want to do is we want to ensure that, of course, the future community, is great, but we also want to protect the existing community and make sure that it is affordable for people that live along the line. So along with the transit project, we have a transit-oriented development study that's going on. And this is us looking at how we can make the area a place where people want to work, live, and play. keep it affordable, having that first in mind. So this is all about connecting it. We realize that, a lot of people want to be able to like walk to a grocery store, walk to entertainment, walk to a bus station. That's kind of like how people are thinking now. So this is the study that we are doing, and on the screen, it highlights things that we're looking at, what is possible in these areas. So we did have phase 1 of our TOD study that was recently completed. At the end of this slide, it will have the website link. I encourage you all to go on there and you can see some information about the TOD study that was released. But this is some of the milestones that we had. We concluded that study in early of this year. So we were looking at affordable housing, TOD place type definition, station area planning. All the 20 stations are very different. So what works in Ladson might not work in North Charleston. That might not work downtown. So we want to make sure every station mirrors the community where the station is located. So this slide has a lot of information, so I'll just let you all take a look at it. But, we're looking at the rapid growth. Of course, that comes with rapid transit, like I mentioned. This is all to plan. Like, we have to plan for the future. We have to make sure that it is, something that is a place people want to work, live, and play. But, affordability is important to keep in mind. This project will bring so many jobs, and, there's so much growth in, just new things that can come out of this, but you want to have a plan in place so that it is organized and you are keeping certain things in mind. So this just highlights some of the statistics that we're looking at with the projected regional growth. So this is another slide that has a lot of numbers on it. It's looking at affordable housing and equitable TOD. Affordable housing is a huge component of this project. Like I mentioned, we want to make sure that the area, Rivers Avenue is a prime area where this project will run. And, there is a transit need on that corridor. People rely on transit. People need transit. And so it makes sense to keep the people that need it to have the close access to it. So this is just looking at how the project will be equitable. And, we're looking at, all the different types of people along the line and how it will greatly benefit them. So we are going into our phase 2 of our TOD study. We actually just hired a firm to take over that portion of the study, and there will be a lot of next steps that we're taking. Of course, we are continuing looking at affordable housing, continuing looking at the stations and biking, pedestrian, and transfer infrastructure. One of the things that I want to highlight with this phase is that we will be doing a lot of community and stakeholder outreach, making sure that all the communities along the line know about the project, know about TOD, know about what's happening, and have a voice, because their voice is, of course, very important with a project like this. So I want to highlight the cost of the project. It's 60-40. The 60 is our federal funding that we are currently working towards. And then the 40% is the local funding that we got back in 2016 with that half-cent sales tax. So here is the timeline of the project. We are currently in our engineering phase, which is really exciting. As you can see, we've completed a lot of great work. Since 2016, we've been doing a lot of planning. So we've made it this far to engineering, and then construction will be starting around 2026 with the system opening in about 2028. So I wanted to highlight something really exciting that just happened with the project. But before I do that, I do want to highlight just the community and stakeholder engagement that is just so important with this project. With my position, I talk with neighborhoods, communities, down in the Charleston area. We've done presentations with the East Side community. We've done stuff with Gaston Green. And that is really just the goal, is to be out there and make sure the community knows and is aware and knows that their voice is important. And so that is a huge part of this project's community outreach. We want to make sure we're always touching base with the neighborhoods along the line and making sure that, they have a space to come chat with our project team. And what's really exciting is we were able to have a meeting, with Secretary Pete Buttigieg and Representative Clyburn recently. And we were able to present to them, our latest update. And, it was great to receive their support. Chairman Seekings was there as well. And, it was just a great event full of a lot of excitement about the future of transit in the Charleston area. So we just have some information on here to show you all about, having the support, from great representatives who are pushing for equitable transit. So I wanted to end with just some resources for you all. I'm working, of course, so that's my information down there, my email, my number. And then Sharon Hollis is the project lead. Unfortunately, she couldn't be here tonight, but she has her information there, and she's definitely open to chatting with anybody about the project. We also have our website, our email, and social media as well. We definitely want to make sure that you all connect with us, stay engaged. We have a newsletter, things like that. So it's, we still have a few years left to go, but we definitely want to ensure that the public knows about what is happening and what is going on. So thank you. With that, I'll end my presentation, and thank you all for listening.
Questions from the commissioners? Jason? Yeah, but you reached first.
Well, I caught that Charleston County has secured funding to support this, but I didn't hear anything about Berkeley or Dorchester. Is there?
Yes, so we did not receive funding from them yet. That is something we do, of course, hope for. Our regional goal is to have all three counties experiencing rapid transit. So it will start, the foundational spine will start in Charleston County, but it is something that we are working with the other counties with, because we have heard that they are interested, in having a system like this. So it is a goal of ours, is to, of course, get all the counties involved.
It just seems that that's where most of the growth is going to be. So if you're planning to have the transit-oriented communities developed outside of Charleston, where there's already been so much development that interferes, maybe if we could get them involved. I'm preaching to the choir, I know, but but they have the most opportunity to incorporate this into their development as the development occurs, whereas in Charleston County, a lot of it's retroactive. We got to come in and readjust.
So let me jump in here just for a second. So the good news, there's some good news and there's some not so good news. The good news is, on the transit-oriented development side of this project, we are extending into Berkeley and Dorchester counties. We're actually spending monies to do that. As you know, neither Berkeley nor Dorchester County have funding sources dedicated and directed to transit or transportation, because it's not in their DNA. We believe that through the transit-oriented development study and with the population growth that you've very aptly referenced, particularly in the Somerville area and northern Berkeley County, all that, we will naturally extend into Somerville. We've already basically got the routing mapped out. As I said, the study, they're part of our study group. So as we build this out, I suspect there'll be a lot of work going on, future planning, but we will be ready for it. And we will share our transit-oriented development studies with those counties, because as you can see, this is a transit project, but it's so much more than that. I mean, this is a land use effort and a really shift in the way we think about how we live, work, and play in the Low Country. And we want to make sure they get the findings and the benefits of the monies that we've expended that have come from the federal government, from local governments. So it's a great question. We'd love to get it into those counties as soon as we can. But if you think about it, we started here in Charleston in 1670, and we're now in 2022, just getting our first large scale transit project. So good things come to those who wait. It won't be another 350 years before we get to Berkeley County. I can assure you that. So we're thinking about it and we're planning for it.
Yeah, thank you.
Sure.
Question from commission.
Thank you. Oh, go ahead.
No,
Carol. I'd like to go last.
Okay.
Yeah. It's not a earth-shattering important question. So go ahead.
Well, I really appreciate your presentation, and it's obvious that you've put it together in response to a lot of community input already. So I guess I'm interested in what our commission and our city that, is now pledged in our comp plan and in the other value statements, mission statements that we've adopted over the last few years to work on the whole equity, especially when it comes to affordability and jumpstarting, local development that would involve business entrepreneurs and things like that. So do you expect that, and I know you're the communications person that is delivering the information that's, been decided in other places, but in terms of just how you're going to do the implementation of a lot of the vision that you're, addressing with us, focusing on affordability and focusing on equitable transit-oriented development and things like that. It all comes down to what government will do, right? So I hope that there's going to be some nitty-gritty work that I know COG is like, a big daddy that sets the bars high, but local government decides if they're going to go along with all of those aspirations. And, I've seen a lot of programs like One Region, that there just seems to be just to speak frankly, a love for putting all these big picture global plans together. But at the end of the day, we can't control what government will do on a local level, except case by case by case. So I guess that would be my interest and encouragement that, the rapid transit team would come back to municipalities sooner than later to figure out how we're going to keep this focus on affordability, for example, in make it real in the next, as you're opening it up in 2028 for the next 50 years. So that would be my my hope. But it seems like you've got a lot of the interest in terms of how you've already put together the things that are important to our community. So, yeah, bravo.
Absolutely.
Let me just jump in really quick on that, because that's probably a me question anyway. I am head of the steering committee. This is not a theory project. This is happening. And one of the things that we're very focused on is that corridor and what it looks like once we get this up and running in 10 and 20 years after it, and that it is built in a way that is equitable, that is accessible, and achieves the goals that we want. I mean, mobility is freedom and access to all the things that we worry about. Affordable housing, food, all those things are things that we're thinking about. And just to show that the local governments, you're very astute and you're right, that the one thing that local governments have in their pocket that will really cement the success of this project is zoning, right? And that's where this commission can really come in and help. We rode today for Leadership Charleston, the northern half of this corridor. We rode it from the fairgrounds just about to the Charleston border, a little bit north of there. And it was really eye-opening to me. I hadn't done it in a while, how much opportunity there is along that corridor for the appropriate development for the things that we need in this community. There is no other place where there's that much opportunity. A little bit less when you get into Charleston, but still in Charleston as well. And one of the things I will credit North Charleston, they have already adopted a transit-oriented development overlay zone today. It's in place to think about what that's going to do and how that's going to attract certain types of development. North Charleston is very different than Charleston in that it is not particularly sophisticated and advanced in its levels of zoning. And they'll admit that it's not a dig at them. It's just a fact. It's essentially an unzoned corridor. So local governments and groups like this commission, that's where the influence over this will come and will set the bar for success or not on the community development side of it. If you build it, they will come, and they will. Now we just need to make sure when it's built around there, it's built to zoning that gives us the opportunities to succeed on many levels. So it started, we're thinking about it, more to come. And it's really what got my brain thinking about bringing Morgan here and getting this commission involved, because that's exactly where this commission can have influence as we go through the transit-oriented development study. We go to phase 2 of it, is to make sure that Charleston leads by example on this and actually influences our neighbors to the north, North Charleston.
So just for the information for the commissioners, because our job is to advise city standing committees, city council standing committees, which standing committees of city council is involved in making the approvals and moving things from that level onto the full council.
community development in the first instance, for sure. And then, I mean, traffic and transportation to a little lesser extent, but it's really council and it's our planning department. I mean,
Right.
zoning really comes through section 54 of our code, and it's not implanted in any one committee. It's really through our policymaking and our staff.
All right, thank you.
So,
Could I just say one follow on to Councilman Seeking's affirmation comments? I take that. I mean, I know that currently we try to incentivize affordability, and I don't think there's enough incentives in the toolkit to make the kind of deep and lasting affordability to be built without going to the legislature and saying we need some more tools that are sticks too. So I would think that maybe that would be what our commission could encourage COG to consider sooner than later, that we need our state legislature on board. If this is going to be something that the whole state is going to, brag about, build on, take advantage of on a very positive basis, that we're going to need the cooperation from having those enabling laws that would give jurisdictions the opportunity to zone appropriately. So that's just.
I need to hear from the lead personal work group on economic empowerment on this issue. Who happens to be an engineer, since they're doing engineering work. I mean, just saying.
Yeah, I mean, I guess for me, my only concern is displacement. I mean, that really doesn't have anything to do with engineering, but ultimately, anytime that we see projects like this come along in areas along corridors and such that, exist in North Charleston, Rivers Avenue, we have to be conscious about a couple of things. Like, how do we not displace folks?
Mhm.
And then another issue for me is how do you overcome the stigma about who rides the bus? Right.
Yeah.
And then also while you're overcoming that stigma, also be sure that you don't ostracize or forget about the folks who currently ride the bus.
Absolutely.
So how do you overcome some of those challenges? Is that something that's been thought about? I mean, because it's kind of like you was talking about Berkeley County, right? It's you want to get ahead of the game. Berkeley County can get ahead of the game when it comes to, BRT, but we have an opportunity to get ahead of the game whenever, we're talking about, allowing folks to stay in the communities that they currently live in without being displaced by this, multi-million-dollar project that's about to come through. So
Yes.
how do they benefit from this as well?
Yeah, and thank you for bringing up those great points. You mentioned two great points, so I'm trying to think which one I want to answer first. I think I'll answer the second one first, because I think that'll be a little bit shorter. But with people, I guess what you were talking about was how people view transit riders or view just transit in general in the area. And, that is a great point to acknowledge, because obviously, in the South, people do view transit differently. And so with this project, we do want to encourage the general public to look at it as a valid option. Of course, we love our cars, but this is something that it will be very accessible. Having that dedicated bus lane allows it to be premium, so it will move more efficiently. But we definitely do want to kind of change that stigma that we see. And, we recognize that there are people who it's an option for them, but then there's people who depend on transit, and so those transit those transit need riders, the ones who truly depend on it, are the people who I would say are really going to be the heart of the system, because they're the ones that are going to be relying on it. And so we do want to make sure that, they can stay in their neighborhoods along the line. They're the ones that need it. And so with this project, that's why we are investing so much with the transit-oriented development study, looking at, the affordable housing, how we can make this, something that is, planned out and great, but really looking at the core of the community and, making sure that they can stay in it. So those studies are continuing and going on. That is unfortunately something that we do see though with other transit systems. Sometimes developers, of course, will look at that area. So with our TOD, we are looking at affordability and we also are looking at different policies that can be put into place where, certain areas may, can't be developed in certain ways to keep, the heart of a certain community. So those conversations are going on. We do recognize that unfortunately that does happen with transit projects, but with our TOD studies, that is something that we are keeping in mind. And that is why it's so important to have a system, that has that focus on, okay, how are we going to make sure that there are policies, rules put in place that can protect the existing community members.
I don't want to cut the conversation short, but we do have a time. Thank you so much. The second part.
You're
second
welcome.
Second question, part of his question.
I think I kind of mush it together,
Okay,
but if.
great. Great.
Okay.
Jason? Okay, great. Well, thank you so much.
Thanks, Morgan.
Thank you. Y'all have a good one.
So there appears to be some opportunity for us to comment on the transit-oriented development. It's interesting to me that phase 2, the equity piece is coming on at the same time that the engineering work is done. As an old city planner, I would have liked to have had some of that equity stuff done so the engineers would know how to draft it, but hopefully this process, the chairman's intervention and what we're doing now will be able to work together to make sure all that positive impact happens.
Well, just on the engineering side, this is a little bit different than a transit project you might otherwise think about. There's very, very little in terms of land acquisition. This is going through existing infrastructure, and the routing that we picked was very purposeful. We didn't bring it down 26 for a reason. We wanted to bring transit where it's needed. You don't need any more transit on 26, but you sure as heck need it to the east side of 26 and up through the corridor getting to Somerville. So I think actually the timing on this is pretty good. And I would encourage y'all, if you ever are in the area, just drive along that corridor with the mindset of what's around it. And if one of the things that you're concerned about, we always should be, is displacement, you'll see there's very little opportunity for displacement along that corridor because there isn't much there in terms of housing. There is some smaller commercial activity, but it's a place where if we do it right and zone it right and develop through it right, it'll be an opportunity, not a displacement project. So if you go through there and look at it, I think you'll be fairly satisfied that that's factual.
Well, thank you, Steve and Dr. Grimes for their presentation, and certainly gives us some kind of fodder to think about as we move forward. The next item on our agenda is our Heart Manager's update.
Good evening, everyone. So just a couple of high level updates. First of all, thank you to everyone who attended the MUSC Inclusion and Innovation Summit and also the Dixie Meltdown, where Stephen was a part of the panel. So thanks for everyone who were participants in supporting that. And also I'm still meeting with a couple of the departments to create a DEI action plan for the different departments inside the city. Chloe Stuber and I also presented to the Center of Creative Retirement, the racial equity story mapping. The Center of Creative Retirement is associated with the College of Charleston. So we're trying to create partnerships there. There are a couple of, well, it's a good bit of them, retired professors. And also in communication. So the last that I will speak on is the communication piece. And I have been submitting to Hey Charleston. And so I will continue to submit to Hey Charleston on a weekly basis. And then on a quarterly basis, we will push out a newsletter of the accumulation of things that we are working on. So what I would need from you all is a short bio. That way I can introduce the commissioners to the public. And also I'll be undergoing the web page training, so that we could also update our pages. And on those pages, as we discussed in the last meeting, we'll be able to create the side rails with the different, and also links, and who our heart member are, who our heart commissioners are, and what we're doing with the equity core team as well. Any questions? All right, thank
You know,
you.
Do we have any feedback from the mayor on filling vacancies?
The mayor is working on filling vacancies. There is someone who is of interest for one of the council members, and he's also going to reach out to Councilmember Shealy for his person, and if he doesn't respond, he will appoint someone.
Great. And you mentioned that you're working on DEI plans.
Yes.
With departments, which departments are?
All of the
a priority?
departments, because right now we don't have anything set up that has DEI. The department head under Amber leadership, the department heads were trained on DEI when it came to, I think Dr. Owens did the training with the College of Charleston. But I would like to have something in place that the departments will have at their disposal.
We just urge as the work groups, if we work groups that we're working, if we could align and perhaps give priority to the departments that are touching those work groups, that might allow us to move forward so that our recommendations are in alignment.
Okay,
and it also probably would be helpful if we have some departments that are not in our top tier on this list, at least in the report, we can comment, okay, that we're going to get to them, right? So that becomes messaged out.
Thank you.
Other questions or suggestions? Carol?
Just one quick question. I'm sorry that I was away, so I couldn't do the NUSC thing, but do you have any key takeaways or next steps, or was it just an educational experience?
It was just basically educational. There were a wide variety. So Dr. D'Angelo, she was the keynote for noon, and she spoke about white fragility. And there are different websites I can send to each of you who weren't able to attend all of them. The breakout sessions were recorded, so I could send those, but the keynotes were not. And then we had to begin with, it was Chris King, and he spoke along the educational line. And then to close, it was Isabel Wilkerson, and she has the book Cass. And so those were the keynotes. So it was just basically, the whole theme was based on race, so. It was good. Thank you.
So that brings us to work group reports. Economic empowerment. Well, again, let me set the stage. Okay. At our last session, we agreed that we would review the economic empowerment, housing mobility, and criminal justice reform sections of the special commission report, comparing them to the priorities set or recommendations outlined in the equity, resilience and equity section of the master plan. Also, to the degree possible, if we were aware of any actions that were happening, for example, what Mike brought to us as relates to the rapid transit piece, we would also try to incorporate that with a goal of trying to be ready to submit a progress report to the city council in December. So the work groups, Alvin, on the lead on economic empowerment?
Yeah, not a problem. So the Economic Empowerment Task Force met Tuesday, November 1st via Zoom. The attendees were myself, Alvin T. Johnson Jr., Carol Jackson, Robert Simons, Jerry Harris, and the HARC manager, Adrian Swinton. The Economic Empowerment Task Force met to discuss, review, and assess the intersection of the city plan and Special Commission on Equity, Inclusion, and Racial Conciliation final report recommendations and actions to implement SCERC recommendations and their alignment with the city plan, which was adopted by council on October 21st, 2021. The discussion began with the purpose and intent of the recommendations rendered by the Economic Empowerment Subcommittee. The intent was to focus on Black-owned businesses and then pivot to providing economic support in the areas of transportation, healthcare, homeownership, housing, et cetera. It was important to establish and agree upon the aforementioned prior to proceeding with discussing the city plan. We then reviewed the 16 economic development recommendations outlined in the city plan. While conducting this review, it became apparent that we recognize not only the intersectionality of the economic empowerment recommendations with the city plan, but the intersection of economic empowerment with the other areas, whether that be criminal justice, health disparities, environmental justice, history and culture, housing and mobility, internal review, and youth and education. Further discussion then led to the acknowledgement to not have a siloed approach when discussing any and all of the recommendations set forth by the SCE IRC, regardless of the subcommittee source. At the end of the day, the Economic Empowerment Task Force unanimously agreed that the recommendations set forth by the Economic Empowerment Subcommittee do align with the city plan. The challenge before us is putting that plan into action. We then brainstormed about a few strategic examples to support or influence outcomes in alignment with the city's pursuit of opportunities to increase diversity, equity, and inclusion. Our immediate examples propose a HARC statement to the BAR in support of the proposed amendments that loosen city architecture review controls in traditionally African-American communities when homes need rehab coming under BAR authority. The more strict approval standards are proposed to be softened for homeowners in eligible income, categories and or document longstanding ownership that has kept Black neighborhoods sustainable for decades. More complex examples touch on HARC opportunities as the city continues its work plan in support of areas expected to be impacted by the construction of the Low Country Bus Rapid Transit Line and the low line of the abandoned train tracks. We discussed similar carrot and stick incentives and regulations to guarantee sustainable, diverse, mixed income neighborhoods as Gadsden Green community is redeveloped by public-private partners, Charleston Housing Authority will bring to the table. So that's pretty much our first task force meeting in a nutshell. So any questions? As I look around the room, I think half people in here were on the call.
I do have a question.
Yes, sir.
So this is just step one. So we're gonna have another meeting at some point, because I guess the end result is for council. I think Jerry and you and I chatted, is to have a list of tangible language and ordinance, basically ordinance suggestion, right? Or some sort of action item that we could actually bring to, for example, to CD committee or to traffic and transportation. So we have something actually to debate. Is that the end? Is that the end game here at some point?
So each of the, depending on where each work group lines up,
Yeah.
there may be specific ordinance language.
Yeah.
There may be suggestion
Okay.
for more engagement by that committee and giving priority to some aspect of what it is that we're talking about. And I think also across the board, the section in the master plan that talked about community engagement, those 6 elements are critical across the board. So I would think in each element, one of the comments might be to the standing committees that there be enhanced or particular attention to community involvement and engagement if we're moving a project forward. And so I think, so the answer is yes, but it won't.
We're not there yet.
They're not there yet, and hoping, based on feedback from the commissioners across groups today, the individual groups will go back and work, try to come up with a more narrow statement, all right? And then we'll try and put it together and bring it back at our December meeting.
Thank you. And I apologize for not attending either of those meetings, but I will be in attendance next round. Jerry will make sure I'm there.
Carol.
Can we just clarify, whoever is the acting chairman tonight, that what we're tasked for in December is just a progress report. So we're not pushing ourselves to come up with anything in terms of a list of final recommendations or areas of the city's work where we want to be more involved, or however we end up with the bottom line of dealing with the special commission's report that, will be continued on into the planning future. So, right, we're just talking about progress.
Progress, but in there's also going to be should be some nudging. All right.
Yeah.
You know, we've heard from planning, for example, the Peninsula Plan is online and is budgeted in 2023. So there may be some observations associated with that. We've heard some conversation today again about the rapid transit project. And in the, I believe in the mobility report, there is discussion about low line.
I think the more concrete we can make are examples of what the council appreciates that what we want to be part of. You know, it's all about connecting our values and our, you know, our priorities of the commission to what the city is actually spending its time and money on, right?
Exactly.
So we're not trying to just like divert them into something that becomes esoteric. We want to be melded into what the city's doing.
And I would just say to that, Carol, you know, I wasn't expecting anything in December. I think we're just reporting out an update in December, but as the spring rolls around, it'd be nice for council to receive some concrete recommendations that either we can give with our legal team, general counsel, to craft into an ordinance, and we can debate on it. I mean, that's ultimately is, I think, the general public. I think the whole point of the special commission was to move from theory to action.
Absolutely.
And that's
Yes,
and
that makes
we're heading
total
there.
sense. Right.
And I just want one more thing, and I appreciate Elvin mentioning the VIR piece. That's done. It's a done deal. That was something that, you know, I worked on, Councilman Gregory. That VIR north of Line Street policy change is in effect. It took a year, but that basically does two things, and it's basically reduces the restrictions on homeowners that have been in their home for 25 years or longer. There's also an exception for those that are making 80% of AMI. And it also reduces the overall restrictions when you go to get renovations for windows or roof repairs. So this is a big change. I think folks in the community often hear about some of the more controversial things, but these are the things that affect everyday homeowners. And these are the things that this commission, I feel, can really make some progress on. And it's not the most exciting stuff. But you ask a homeowner that has been denied by VAR that has to spend $20,000 on a roof, if this is not exciting, and they will tell you it is. So I just want to say thanks, Elvin, for mentioning that, and it's been approved, and we're moving forward.
Good, let's change our thing in December. Gradually.
Or we can. Jen?
And Mr. Chairman, Carol Fry has his hand up online.
Okay. Carol?
Yes, Jerry, and other members. I just want to reinforce what Jerry said a few minutes ago about engagement, because myself and maybe some others on the committee, those of us who haven't been as involved from the beginning of the commission, as we've waded into the 10-year plan and all the recommendations, it has become, you know, very obvious how much work has been done already, and how you know, how difficult it is to make sure that we're taking into account everything. And I think that, you know, the average Charleston citizen out there would be in a similar situation. And so I just want to reinforce what Jerry said. You know, engagement is really one of the key things that we need to make sure that we're doing as we move forward. So I just wanted to make sure I reinforce that point that Jerry made earlier. Thanks.
Thank you, Carol. Any other questions to the economic empowerment section? But let's move on to the housing and mobility task force. Actually, Mike gave his report already, but
I'm sorry, Jerry, one more thing to add to Elvin's plate. This evening at Community Development, we approved a memorandum of understanding between the South Carolina Commission for Minority Affairs and the City of Charleston NWBE office with Ruth Jordan to basically work in partnership to promote and disseminate information and resources to increase the number of SC minority small businesses that do business in the city of Charleston. So this has been codified. It's an MOA. It's another step in the right direction. And you can just add that.
so women, minority business enterprises, what the NWBE is, because everybody doesn't know the acronyms.
Yes. Thank you, Jerry, for but that was approved this evening.
Right. So that was approved by the committee.
Yeah.
And we go to city council for action, or did it just be signed?
I think it's, it was as an MOA that we approved. And I don't know if it comes.
It will come through council as part of the committee report.
Thank you. Again, the Housing Mobility Task Force, Mike led that conversation. He did do a quick summary, but the summary kind of reflects the focus of interfacing, looking at the rapid transit project and looking at permanent funding stream for construction maintenance of sidewalks and pedestrians, cycle and cyclist infrastructure systems, and expanding partnerships with the redevelopment corporation. So they do see a lot of intersection, all right, in the two plans, and had some specific kinds of things that they're pointing to. And we'll have language to come back with that. And obviously, the work with the rapid transit project, as was discussed in the last meeting with the Peninsula Plan being worked on by the planning department. Should be part of the language of what we talk about in terms of what we're paying attention to. Bonnie, criminal justice?
Yep, so we met as a criminal justice forum task group on Thursday, November 3rd. And it's just a three sections of that. There's a section on policing, one on courts, and one on ordinances. We split those up among members, and I'm going to report to you primarily on policing and courts. Stephen worked on ordinances, and so I don't know as much about what he figured out. But there isn't much in the 10-year plan that is about anything about courts or, you know, that specific kind of activity of the courts. And so, but the biggest thing is the engagement piece and knowing that we want to engage the community and understanding all the stakeholders' positions and suggestions. And I know some of that has been done. So in terms of the policing group, part of it is, you know, there has to be some engagement with the police department and understanding what their kind of updates are. So I think that's going to be important in terms of assessing their policies and practices. And then continuing implementation of the CNA racial bias audit report recommendations, and the policing subcommittee suggested review by an independent third party. And if there's any of this, because you were in on this meeting, and Carol was there. Yeah. And then, so they went through each of the different strategies and talked about kind of what they need to work on with that. So I think, but a lot of it is, you know, we need to understand more and talk to the stakeholders in terms of the budget for the police department, a rigorous budget review for any needed changes. Carol, maybe you could speak to that for just a minute. Was there anything about the budget review? Were you thinking as your subcommittee that we would want to have an independent evaluation of that, or that the policing or the public safety subcommittee would do it?
We didn't, you know, talk specifically about, you know, exactly what entity should do it, but we thought, okay, it does need to happen. And that's an item for some future discussion, is the fact that it does need to happen and follow-up needs to occur.
Yeah. Okay. In terms of the courts, so I was a little bit out of my element here, not being an attorney. But it was really interesting to me. I talked with Arthur McFarland about the courts because he was on that part of what I've been in my mind now calling the equity plan, so that I don't have to say SCEIRC or so equity plan. And yeah, so what is important in terms of the courts is ensuring that the judiciary is an independent third branch, and apparently in the past it has been under the finance committee, and they needed more independence. And so it sounds like from talking to Mr. McFarland as well as Councilman Shade, that's in progress, but that we need to formalize it. And so that is a place where we're going to need some language that comes up with the structure of the courts and who's in charge of what. Legal department. Okay. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, they kept saying CFO. So, but maybe that was above legal. So that's where it's all kind of confusing, but it makes sense that they need to be independent, right? So that they can make their own decisions. One of the things I noticed in thinking about the courts is that there was a lot of focus. I know the court system is generally set up for the rights of the people who are accused, but I wanted a piece in there about the victims of crime too, and to make sure crime victims are treated equitably as well. And so that's one thing I'm going to want to look at in addition to the objectives that are already in there. So we're going to review all of the objectives with each stakeholder, and most importantly, the citizens, but also mayor, court director, judges, public defenders, and other attorneys, and the public safety committee of city council. So I think that's our next step. And I don't know what Stephen came up with on ordinance.
And you plan to convene another meeting of your group?
We will convene another meeting. Did we set a date? I think we didn't set another date. So we will do that in the coming week.
So we are, at first thank all of the members of the commission who took the time to meet and share and review. It was intentional on our part to force us into actually reading the documents and going through them and learning. I think it's been beneficial in terms of us coming to a common level of information. The next challenge that we have is again based on our comments and discussion here, to go back and refine some language that you would like to see included in a report. We want to share our language as early in December as we can with Adrian, give her an opportunity to draft something, circulate to us with the hope that we will have something drafted up that we can submit to city council in December to make the time frame. Quick conversation I've had with Jason is that we write the report, submit it, give them an opportunity to read it, and then we go and talk with them perhaps in January about what's in the report. So it's not just a check the box kind of situation. So in terms of that's our thinking about the timetable.
The only thing I would add to that, Jerry, is to make sure that we're all there for that January meeting. Would be something that I think Adrian would probably lead, particularly with Jerry or anyone else, but I would encourage all of the commission members to be there for that meeting.
Certainly. So any additional questions, observations around the work group? Or is there anything from the experience of doing that, again, because we, I keep saying we're flying the plane while we're building it. Is there anything that we learned? And we had some conversation in our session body, your session I participated in. You want to share any of that?
Yeah, so we started out our subcommittee meeting talking about the process of how we're going to get this work done, sort of independent of the content of it. And so we were talking about, how can we be the most effective, and especially when things are tense or difficult, or we come from different places or, places of understanding. And so one of the things we did is talked about, how to have a good conversation. We talked about being honest, right? Also working on not being defensive, but just kind of absorbing the information that's given to us, looking for data where it exists and being able to separate something that is factual or could have factual data versus something that's more opinion and experience, and being able to understand the differences in those things. trying to be concise. I don't remember all of the things we wrote them down so that we have a good way of, but I'm happy to also talk to the whole council at some point, or the whole commission at some point about and have that discussion, kind of that same kind of discussion about how we can work together, particularly because we haven't had the expert come in and talk to us about talking about really difficult things.
So one of the things that I was hoping to happen out of this work, this first step of work that we've been doing, is that we discover what the expertise exists within the group, and encourage folks to share. So in that session, Bonnie took the lead in terms of the group dynamics and the like. And so we now know we have our internal consultant on that. I know, talking to Bob, he's got experience of working in government agencies and things of that nature. So he's bringing that to the dance. So I'm hoping that as we do this work and go forward, we will continue to discover, what the special sauce is of everybody. All right. And that we encourage folks to share their special sauce with the group, both informal sessions and informal sessions, because we're trying to make this an effective body. Okay. Open discussion. Anything that anyone wants to bring to the table?
I do.
Okay.
I know that the public can come and speak to us in these meetings, but they generally don't. I'm wondering if we could figure out a way to get input more from the public just along and along. And I don't know how to do that. I don't have any idea. But it would be really nice. I think you had some ideas, Adrian. It sounds like the newsletter is going to be helpful, and just wondering if anybody else had any other ideas.
The newsletter is helpful. Thank you for that. The newsletter is helpful, but there has to be access to the newsletter. One of my suggestions is going to where the people are. I mean, if we could have, I don't know how that would work. And along the lines of what Jerry just said, everybody brings their special sauce. So my special sauce is DEI. And a part of being a part of DEI work is meeting people where they are. And also when it comes to understanding. So when we all have a different journey, we all need to be honest if we don't understand something, to ask for clarity. And when we ask for clarity, those who are giving clarity don't become defensive, because we are all here to learn. I think if we, like I said, I don't know if these meetings have to be in this setting every time, but if we could go to where those individuals are, those communities that are impacted the most, that would be one of my other suggestions.
I just want to add to that, Adrian, the definition of impacted the most, right? I mean, the fact that we're talking about equity, both sides are going to be impacted the most. So I'm perfectly fine with taking the show on the road, going to where the people are, where all people are, because at the end of the day, look who's in the room, right? I mean, I don't know how many people are watching live on the YouTube channel, but 5. So yeah, I mean, we meet the third Thursday of every month, and we want to meet the third Thursday of every month for a pretty good while. So, we talk about outreach. Maybe part of the outreach is we have this commission. This is what we're talking about, and this is where we're going to be, right? So part of the definition of equity is meeting people where they are. So we probably just have to go meet everybody where they are. Bob.
I was just going to say, there's a lot of different places to get to. It might complicate things, but have we done letters to the editor? I mean, there's Post and Courier, there's a lot of different local papers around, and just, hey, this is how often we meet. If you're, I mean, a lot of people still read the paper. It's not just online. And I think it's often overlooked and can be very effective. Just a letter to the editor. Hey, here we are. Here's when the meeting is. You can go online and watch. And just something that simple, I think all the papers would be happy to publish.
This is Sharon Milligan. I'm sorry, I'm on the phone.
Go ahead.
I think that's a terrific idea. I don't know if y'all can hear me.
Yeah, we can hear you.
Great, thank you. I apologize for just being on the phone, but I think that's a terrific idea, because I've also believed fervently that so many major corporations are doing the best job that they can do for diversity and inclusion, but they don't always know what to do. And if we could incorporate, and I can just speak for financial services, almost all of them have identified and created a diversity and inclusion incorporation in every aspect of their business. These folks have visibility, they have goals, they have responsibilities. And if we could reach out to them as well to be a participant, and we could get ideas, we could do some sharing. But I think there's so many people so anxious to do something, but they're just not sure what to do or what all the resources actually are. So in this outreach, going where people are, also going where people want to be and are not sure how to get there. So I think that would be a help as well.
Thank you. Carol Fry, you want to weigh in on this?
Yeah, I think that's a very good idea. You know, and it's, you know, something that, you know, there's, as several of you have mentioned already, you know, I mean, there's, you know, this is, could be, you know, really an overwhelming task because, you know, as an example, homeowner associations. There's lots of different ways, you know, and places to engage the community. And it's just a matter of, you know, someone would have to, you know, take on the task of saying, okay, you know, what's the place where we could get the biggest impact, you know, for the effort that we would put into something. So I think it's a good idea because I do totally believe that, you know, the citizens of Charleston, you know, are they're the ones that we're working for, and we need to make sure that we keep them updated as best we can. So I do agree with the concept of getting the information out in every way that we can.
Carol, thanks for those comments as well. The two things that I see is already improved from our special commission is I feel like this particular group already is willing to have those conversations. Bonnie, what I've seen is having some tough conversations. We're not there yet, but in a respectful way without feeling defensive. I don't think we got there with the special commission, to be honest with you. And I think some of it was people weren't willing to do the work. And I think everyone here so far seems to be willing to do that work. The piece about the communications, I think, Adrian and I, you and I, either we have a special subcommittee for this, but one of the things, the challenges with the special commission was we can make some improvements on telling our story and sharing the work that we're doing. And I think we're starting with that with the newsletter. I think a you know, op-ed piece and commentary, that's one piece, Bob, but I think you know, the other part is social media and using our social channels. I mean, that's how folks are communicating. That's how a large majority of this gets passed to the community. And we're not going to be able to connect with everybody, but I think we can certainly do a better job of communicating the intent of this commission. Because I think then when things come to council for debate, we're going to find that the general community is going to have a little greater sense of the nuance. We saw the direct result of not having the nuance of some of these issues when we were trying to make this commission permanent. So those are my thoughts and suggestions, but I'm willing to help out, particularly on a communications plan. And I think, Adrian, it's my understanding you have access to some finances. And maybe we can devote some of those finances to either putting a plan together or maybe finding someone to assist you. Aren't they one-time use, right? No funds?
Yes.
Yeah.
So I'm sorry, great, Bonnie.
I think those are some really good ideas. I was at Pride Festival this past weekend and walked around to different tables that I thought might be kind of stakeholders in this work, and just kind of introduce myself and ask them who would want to talk to us or who we should talk to when we get to that point in the plan. And so I think that was really helpful. And I would love for us to go, you know, it doesn't have to be everybody going, but a few of us could go to different community events and walk around and talk to people. We could even have a table if there's an appropriate event where the community can come and talk to us. And I think that would be really helpful.
I guess just informal, so there's Charleston Farmers Market, there's West Ashley Farmers Market.
Yeah.
Those are great opportunities for us to at least
Yeah.
start to tell the story, yeah.
So in our conversation so far, we've talked about the city council and the city employee, the city department heads as an audience for our communication. We talked about the general, I mean, in terms of saying that we're working in December, all right, we may need to think about who else might be the audience for that, for this, our first statement in terms of progress and how we get that out. The other thing is, it struck me in going to the summit, and thank you so much for making it accessible to us, the MUSC summit. A couple of days later, I was over at the College of Charleston, and they have a racial equity initiative that they're doing, and the whole conversation going on there. Okay, so they're as Sharon suggests, and I guess the Regional Chamber of Commerce has got their initiative. One of the things that we should think about doing, and I don't know, you have to figure this out in your work program because you only have so much time in the day, is how we create linkages, all right, with those groups so that, you know, what we're talking about the city of Charleston. But even in the special commission, we recognize that the challenges that we have, this is a regional dynamic and not just a city dynamic. So some of them, even talking about the rapid transit project, all right? We're already crossing the border. So being in contact with and communicating with other entities, all right? Some of the things, if they're having events that are bringing people together, us showing up to them, they're intentionally spaces where people are talking about diversity and equity. That's another category, I guess, of opportunity for us to think about.
Yeah, I think it would be great to have the chambers, I think he's a vice president or whatever his title is, they've never had a person full-time on staff dedicated to DEI for the chamber. And I met with him this summer, I think, not long after he started in the job. So that would be a good, I'm sorry. Maybe. I have his contact on my phone. Anyway, just to invite, because they, you know, I don't know how widespread they expect their mission to, you know, be established, but the chamber has a big reach in terms of it's the only chamber and they're regional. So I think that would be a really good connection for us to have that cross-pollination. So maybe we can invite him.
So what I'm hearing is it's important for us to create linkages, all right, with entities that are doing the work. But many of the impacted communities are not organized in that fashion. So we and some folks may not be online. All right. So in terms of our communication strategy, we have to recognize, you know, the go to where people are, all right, and to put our information where it's making it accessible to everybody, regardless of their socioeconomic status or education and the like. And it's just important for us to be humble about that and aware of that, and not pat ourselves on the back because, you know, we got all of the likely suspects in the DEI space talking with us or engaged with us. So we got a little bit of work to do. Okay, anything else to come before the body? Not a motion to adjourn is in order. Second, seconded, undebatable. We will stand adjourned at